Jesus was the master storyteller. Sometimes we got to do what we got to do until we can do what we want to do. People often demonize what they don't understand, and so they've not taken the time to learn about algorithms or what audiences on the various platforms and how to tailor and tweak their messaging to appeal to that space. From the church perspective, in person is taking second seat to the digital space.
Let's start off with who you are.
Yeah.
Who is Stephen Thurston?
Let's see, I am a native of Chicago, born and raised on the south side, and then grew up in the south suburbs, matriculated through both private and public school, left here, went to Morehouse College, started off dual degree engineering and math, and then shifted once I started preaching to sociology. From there, went to Mercer University to get my Master of Divinity, came back to Chicago and started pastoring actually while I was in seminary, so flying back and forth. But I started preaching sophomore year at Morehouse. I also had some entrepreneurship through there. Got into business at 17 in the men's clothing business, and then transitioned into real estate investing once I got into Morehouse. Some party promotion stuff for a little bit there in Atlanta while I was in Morehouse. Had a women's shoe store, and then once I moved back to Chicago and was pastoring New Covenant full time, had 2 or 3 more men's clothing stores. So entrepreneurship and ministry have kind of woven themselves together. And running the church is a business. I know people want to put the spiritual thing on it, but there's business here when you got payroll taxes, families that are depending on you. And so this is an enterprise as well. So that's who I am. Outside of the ministry work, I've done social justice work, served at Rainbow Push for a period of time as the National Youth Director, focused on education policy, traveled with Reverend Jackson a little bit, all of that kind of jazz. Always fighting for marginalized and minimized people here in the city of Chicago. And then on the fun side, I'm an equestrian, not a cowboy. There is a difference. And so I ride horses, teach people how to ride horses. Interior design is another piece that I engage in. A lot of people don't know about, but that's a little side hustle that I've got going. And then I've got a consulting firm that focuses on leadership development, change management, and project management. So I got my PMP certification for those who are familiar with that cert. If you're an entrepreneur, you might want to look into it. It'll help you to streamline and structure the work that you're seeking to do.
Oh man, that's excellent. So it sounds like you have done a lot of good work. It sounds like you're very creative.
Yeah.
And you've been a leader since a young age from what I can hear.
For sure.
Talk to me about leadership. What did leadership look like for you being an entrepreneur at 17, knowing that you were called to ministry and doing ministry while you were in college?
Yeah.
How did you know that you were a leader in both the entrepreneurship and in the ministry perspective?
Yeah, when people start asking you how to do what you're doing, asking you to mentor them even at a young age. Hey man, help me to shift things with my ministry. I see what you're doing for your dad. I see what you're doing at New Covenant. I see what you're doing in these other spaces. Help me. It was at that point that I recognized, I guess I'm a leader. People are following me. They're interested in what I'm doing. And so I always look to people who are doing what I wanted to do, doing it better, doing it different, and I would glean from them. I would even reach out to them even if I didn't know them. Hey, can I just sit down with you, have a conversation, pick your brain, just kind of get some of the nuances about how you think, how you flow, how you're moving, the lens through which you look that informs the decisions that you're making. And so tapping into people's wisdom and knowledge helped me tremendously to kind of continue to hone my skill sets as a leader. And then again, as people continue to reach out, asking me, that pushed me further, because you really can't master something until you learn how to teach it. And so people asking me to come in and do work for them actually boosted my leadership skill sets, because I had to like strive harder, dig deeper, do some more research, because if I'm coming in, I got to come in as a full subject matter expert, and I want to have every base covered in case they ask me a question that I don't know how to answer. You know, imposter syndrome, all of that stuff kicks in. And so it just fuels me to keep striving, and I've discovered that a real leader is a lifelong learner. And so I'm constantly reading, trying to stretch, seeing what people are doing, even in other spaces that I can tie back around into the spaces that I primarily work within, that being the church space right now.
That's awesome. You know, you talked about imposter syndrome, right? And we're on this topic of leadership, right? Young man from Chicago, Southside, a lot of people who are in your position when you were young, they don't know what their purpose is. They don't view themselves as a leader.
Yeah.
How does a young entrepreneur, or even just a young person that's looking to become an entrepreneur, deal with that imposter syndrome and identify what their purpose is?
Yeah, I think what helped me to identify my purpose was recognizing what I was most critical of. And I've discovered that that thing that you're most critical of is often the area that you're most gifted in. And when you start tapping into that, again, surrounding yourself with people or connecting with people who work in that space, win in that space, learning and gleaning from them, that helps you to kind of stay on point as relates to what your why is. Because your why really serves as your compass in life. And if you don't have that, it's like you're rudderless and you're just drifting through life. So again, tapping into what you're most critical of. So even for me, I started out in the church space as a musician. Trained, parents put a lot of money into teachers to teach me music theory, all of that kind of stuff. But then I noticed as I was playing in church in Atlanta while I was at Morehouse, that my focus started shifting and becoming more critical, not of the music moment, but of the preaching moment. And that's what kind of helped me to see what was happening on the inside of me and the change in trajectory of life as it shifted from music to ministry in the preaching aspect. And so tapping into those things, imposter syndrome is something that a lot of people deal with. They don't have the language for what it is. Hopefully I've helped somebody to kind of name what it is. And that's simply thinking that you're not good enough or that you're going to be found out. So even for me, I've been preaching in the leadership space in church for 25 years, but I still struggle with imposter syndrome. How it translates for me is I over prepare for sermons because I never want somebody to ask me after sermon a question that I don't have the answer to. And if I don't have the answer to it, they're gonna be like, aha, I got you. Now, I don't know everything. I can't know everything. So that ought to calm me down and cause me to stop doing all this extra study. But nonetheless, imposter syndrome stays there. And so what helps is having people around you that can encourage you and remind you of your magic, of what you really bring to the table. And sometimes our heads are down, we're doing the work, and we don't look up to see all that we've accomplished. And so having those people that are there, not to like stroke your ego, but to remind you, hey, you are doing something, you're doing it well. People are gleaning from you and learning from you and actually modeling you. So you need to walk in what you got, and that's your greatness.
Yeah, that's really good. And you know, one of the things that I've noticed is that as people are working on identifying their purpose or walking in their purpose, a lot of times people are stuck, and even me as a young entrepreneur, between fulfilling my purpose but also being in this survival state, right? I have to provide for myself. If you're like me, you have the family, you have to provide for your kids.
Yeah.
How do you walk in your purpose when you're in a state of survival? And what does that look like, and what did it look like for you?
Yeah, man. It can make you feel like you're bipolar because your attention and your focus can be on two different paths. What you love to do, what you feel called to do, what your why is, may not be bringing in the paper to sustain you. And so you have to do something that's far left of what you really feel passion for and are connected to. So that's what I mean by bipolar. You're in two different spaces at the same time. And here's the reality. Sometimes we got to do what we got to do until we can do what we want to do. And we make the main thing for the moment, but with the mindset of I'm doing this with an intended end goal, where everything that I'm getting from this thing that I gotta do, it's really fueling what I wanna do, and making time to set aside to focus on that you're really passionate about as well. And so you're trying to balance them out and bring them to the place where this is fueling this, which I really love, it's what I gotta do, but this is fueling this to the point where this rises above this and I can fully function in this. But you gotta have a plan and stay consistent with your plan. Don't lose hope, don't lose focus, don't find yourself in a place of this is drudgery. No, this has a purpose. It's just the fuel that's feeding what I really wanna do.
That's excellent. I want to shift gears now, talk a little bit about storytelling. So
Yes.
As you know, I'm a digital storyteller. I do that through visual media, marketing, public speaking, and all these different facets.
Yeah.
And I find that Black people are storytellers by nature.
By nature.
So no matter what area we're in, we figure out a way to tell our story.
Yeah.
And I have specific interest in making sure that we are in control of our story and in our own narrative.
That's right.
So my question for you is, how does storytelling play a role in the work you do as an entrepreneur, as a consultant, and also in ministry?
Yeah. I mean, Jesus was the master storyteller with the parables. He took complex religious ideas and ideology and made it palatable for people by telling stories that built bridges. Stories are connecting points. They help people to see themselves in whatever it is that you're trying to frame, connect the dots in their own personal lives. It just breaks stuff down. And that's what we do as a people. It connects at all levels. It doesn't matter your education level, your station in life, your status. That story, you're going to find yourself in it some way, shape, form, or fashion. And so from a ministry perspective, especially in this digital age, utilizing social media platforms that tell a story. I often talk to our team here, our AV team, our photographers, about the shots that they take while we're in service, and then our still shots. Make it seem like people are excited. Catch the people that are smiling with their hands up. That tells a story to somebody who's looking for a church. I'm looking for a place I can connect to, blah, blah, blah. That's hype, that's energetic, that's giving me substance. That's what we have to show. Show and tell. That invites them in. And so all of the imagery matters. Even when I'm preaching or speaking, what I have on tells a story to the people that are listening to me. There are psychological clues based upon color. I'm a sociologist as well. And so colors communicate certain things. So for instance, if you're talking about money, you might want to wear blue.
Yeah.
Those little nuances all feed into the stories that we tell, and getting people to connect, to buy in, and then take action, which ultimately is the end goal for any storyteller. And so as an entrepreneur, what are you presenting? What are you showing? What are you selling? Because people are going to make judgments, fair or unfair, based upon what you say and what they see. And you've got to communicate effectively to your target market, exegete and understand your target market to know what they're looking for that would make them attracted to you, because you got competition. So what makes you stand out among the competition? The story that you tell and how effective you are in telling that story.
Now, a lot of people have the same opportunity and the same access to this digital revolution that's taking place on social media. Now, what I've seen is that some people are not taking advantage of that, and they now have the ability to share their story that could potentially reach the masses. What's your assessment on why you use it and why other people are struggling to be able to take advantage of that to tell their story?
People often demonize what they don't understand. And so they've not taken the time to learn about algorithms or what audiences on the various platforms and how to tailor and tweak their messaging to appeal to that space. I'm an introvert. I don't like to talk. I know. I got this church, I pastor, I preach, I speak, all of that. I'm an introvert. When it's time to speak, I can hit the on button, but as soon as I'm done, I turn off. But I recognize the power. And what helped me to recognize the power of the platforms, Facebook. When Facebook first came out with Facebook Live, I've been posting posts, and people like, man, your posts are great, yada, yada, yada. Had some traction. And a friend, excuse me, at the time, challenged me to engage Facebook Live, and I kept pushing it off. And so finally, it was October of that year that it came out. I said, cool, I'm gonna do this Facebook Live, and then, I'll run this to December, top of New Year, I'm out of here. I ain't doing this no more. My third Facebook Live, I was focused on relationship. And so I did one on why me and cheat. I have 14,000 views. Like, wow. Okay, I'm on to something. People are connecting. Let me keep running this thing. And we've been running Facebook Lives, Mirror Moments on Fridays for the past 10, 12 years or so. Got good traction, 20,000 followers or so. And so telling these stories about relationship and leadership principles, it's impacting people to the point where I've been in the airport and people have run up to me like, you're the guy from Facebook. I know nothing about these people, white people, black people, old people, all kind of people, but that just shows the power of the technology, and we've got to tap into it and use it for our advantage. Everybody else is, why aren't you? Why aren't you? Tap into it, use it, make it work for you.
Absolutely. And on that note, right, we have the church and the black church that we've seen at different points in time. The black church can be on a downward trajectory in terms of not having the congregation
Yeah.
there, just challenges during COVID, right?
Sure.
And I find that COVID was actually a time where we were able to take advantage of this digital thing because we had to
Yes.
in order to keep the church even running at
Yes.
bare minimum.
Yes.
But we discovered something during that time. So talk to me about how using these digital platforms, using this storytelling in the digital space positively impacts the church life.
So from the church perspective, in person is taking second seat to the digital space. We thought that we were going to have this great resurgence of people coming back after COVID, and a lot of pastors were pushing that, preaching that, believing that, decreeing and declaring, and they people still ain't came back. People got turned on to the option and the opportunity to enjoy Jesus and life at the same time without driving to a building, and that's what they opted to do. So many churches who, again, continue to push back, don't want to embrace it. Here's the real reason: it's ego. If we just gonna be real, raw, and relevant, the ego of the pastor, who in the black church space is accustomed to people talking back to him or her. They don't get that when people are in the digital space rather than in the physical space. And their ego needs people. Codependency, we can walk down that whole psychological line, but codependency issues, playing to that from a toxic perspective, ego, and just needing the people's voice to push them and encourage them, and then being lazy intellectually, because now when people aren't in the building and they're in the digital space, if you're going to hold and capture their attention, you got to be saying something. All the cliches and slap your neighbor upside the head and high five them, that don't work when people are sitting at home. So sir, ma'am, what are you saying that's going to keep people's attention? And if you ain't never said nothing and don't know how to say nothing, you ain't gonna have nobody to say nothing to. So there are some deeper issues as it relates to churches and pastors really not engaging this digital space. We had Howard's Gospel Choir here this past Saturday night. We maybe had about 200 people in the building, but when I checked Facebook, we had 2,000 people that were tuned in to watch it. The digital space is where people are, and we have to get out of the mindset in the church that the people gonna come to us. No, we have to go to where they are, meet them where they are, take Jesus, take ministry, take the gospel there, meet them there. And then the in-person experience will be something, because people are building community differently, especially younger generations. How we connect, how we build community is far different than how baby boomers and older built community, where all of their friends kind of came from church, and their wife, their husband, we met in church. That ain't happening no more. I got Bumble, I got Tinder, I got IM, I got DM, all of that stuff. So we got to go to the digital space because they ain't coming to the physical space, except for when we make something captivating, where we say now, hey, let's come together and have a meetup. But getting people to come into a building consistently, you crazy if you think that's about to happen in the year of our Lord 2024 and beyond.
So how do we engage the youth? You talk about the youth and where they spend a lot of their time.
Yeah.
What strategies are you tangibly using right now to actually reach out and engage the youth and inform them about the kingdom of God?
Yeah, I'm letting them see themselves do stuff in church. So from the welcome to anything else, our video announcements, young people get to see young people in leadership positions, having the mic, having the stage, having the platform. And when you can see yourself in a position of power, that encourages you and reminds you that, hey, that could be me too. I don't have to be old and gray and bent over to serve and to lead. Somebody, my peer is doing it, so why can't I? So I'm being very intentional in that regard. And then here at our church, I'm moving from prophetic messages to prophetic maps. New little terminology that I kind of cooked up. And so we preach the prophetic message and telling people where they need to be, addressing issues, things of that nature from the pulpit, but then we leave them there. People need you to grab them by the hand, hold their hand, walk them to where you just told them that they need to be, provide them and source them with the tools and the resources and the relationships to get there. And so in doing that, even and especially with younger people, meeting them where they are, keeping your pulse on that demographic, seeing what their exact needs are, and then supplying them with the needs and saying not hey, I hate when I go to a store and I'm lost, been there first time. Yeah, go around there, aisle 37. But when I go to Home Depot, because they've been trained properly, they will say it's in aisle 37, but then take me by my hand, sometimes literally, and walk me to aisle 37. If the church would do a better job of doing that for young people, understanding where they are, creating a safe space to ask questions and to challenge theology and some of the bad theology that we've been indoctrinated with. And so we decolonize here at the Cove. We deconstruct at the Cove. We've made sure that we've made it clear that we're welcoming and opening and affirming. All of that to meet people where they are in culture, because it's not about a us versus them, which church often has done over the years, but it's about we. And we growing together, learning together, saying I don't know together, and help me to get to where I do know together. All of us are kind of at equal spaces and places, and that's what young people are looking for in a faith community. Just a place to be free, to grow, to make mistakes, to not be judged, and just to get that helping hand to move forward in life. That's what we seek to do here.
That's so amazing. Now, a lot of people are taking their ministry and taking it to the marketplace.
Yeah.
And I've seen this as a trend across many people in my generation and younger, and even some of the older generation.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what is this wave happening where people are taking their ministry and God is literally using people to minister to the world through the business.
Yeah, man, because the point that I made, everybody's not coming to the church. We, from a sociological lens, let's look back at crack cocaine. We know how it decimated our community, but we often miss talking about what it did to the church. And so here it is that you have grandmama and granddaddy who are now raising grandbaby because mama and daddy are cracked out. Grandmama and granddaddy probably go to a traditional church, Baptist, Kojic, whatever it is, whatever denomination, and you got the little crack baby that grows up to the point where it's like, they church is boring. I don't like this church. And when I get old enough, I ain't going to church. And because grandmama and granddaddy's so old, whatever you gonna do, baby, they ain't got no control over them. Crack baby is now how old? In their 40s. Got kids. Some of them got grandkids. Some of them in their 50s. And so we now have in the African American community 3 to 4 generations in some families that have never connected to church, that have never been in church, that know nothing about church culture. And so if the church is going to be smart, you do what you just said with entrepreneurship and engagement and taking ministry to the marketplace where people can meet Jesus in other spaces because they're not coming to this space. And so also helping people to understand the connection between their faith and their vocation. Because for so long, especially for us creatives, the church was like anti-creative until COVID came, and then creatives is what kept church alive. There was no space here. And so people who had gifts that God had given them go and work secular jobs, and then the church people want to criticize and call them worldly. And so now when we've got creatives in lighting that have now come back to church, why y'all got dark worship and all them theatrical lights? Because God gave these people these gifts, and you called them hellions when they worked in the theater space, and now they're bringing those same skill sets back to the church, and it makes a difference visually when you look at it on the screen. So we have to be able to move around and go to where people are. Another example, since we're storytelling, a piece that I do called Holy Smokes, where we talk about theology, deconstruct bad theology, break it down one cigar at a time, and we do it amongst people who either enjoy cigar smoking, or even if they don't smoke, they're comfortable in that environment. And we go to cigar lounges where people are. Some of those people have never been to church, but they love our engagement because it's a safe space where they can ask questions, dig deep, won't be judged, and ultimately learn something about Jesus, learn something about the sacred text. They will never come to church, but we will take ministry to them. And so we do that, and I'm also in the process of putting our church in a position to own businesses where we can then employ people in the community, set that foundation of faith, but we're not beating them over the head with Jesus. They just get to see us live out Jesus and how we treat them and how we serve the customers that will come into our stores.
Oh man, that's excellent. So we're gonna get ready to wrap up here. I could talk to you for another 2 or 3 hours. I'm sure we'll be able to do this again at some point. But just as we get ready to conclude, what does the rest of this year look like for you? What is the vision for Stephen Thurston for the remainder of 2024?
Making impact. I want to leave a mark on the world and not leave a scar. And so that all I do, from the church space to my consultant space to riding horses to whatever it is that I do, entrepreneurship ventures, it's about making a mark in the world and speaking up for people that are marginalized and minimized. I want people to leave from my experience with them, or even from the experience at the Cove, challenged, changed, and charged. I want you learning something, I want you growing, I want you excited about your future, and I want you to have the tools to make the future possible, to turn that dream into a reality. So that's what I'm focused on this year, from opening up businesses that our church will run to probably buying some more businesses on my own, just to kind of spread things out and create those multiple streams of income. But just making a difference in a positive way, man.
That's amazing. I'm looking forward to it. And if people want to connect with you,
Yeah.
where can they reach out and connect with you?
Sure. They can go to the church, the Cove, C-O-V, thecovchicago.org. That's our website for the church, and connect with us there or on any social media platform, the Cove Chicago. My personal page, StephenJThurston.com. That's my website where you can get access to content on leadership and relationship. Book me, all of that kind of thing is there. And then on social media, Stephen Thurston on Facebook, Stephen J. Thurston on Instagram.
Thank you so much for your time. We
Thank you,
appreciate it
man.
and look forward to the next one.
Let's do it.
All right. Thank you.